Hey, I'm Eiley, and these are the stories from behind the scenes of my life as I displayed it on social media. I've had a knot in my stomach for 4 years knowing that one day I would tell this story. Please allow me some grace, as sharing this with you today is likely going to be the only thing harder than experiencing it back then. Before we begin, I have some accountability to take. I was not innocent within this relationship, and I won't pretend that I was. At the time of these events, both my partner and I were consuming alcohol daily. For that reason alone, I would like to clarify that everything that I'm about to tell you is the truth from my perception. There is another side to this story, as is true with almost every story you'll hear. To be entirely honest, I don't know what that other side looks like. I've been threatened with it. You wouldn't want your family to see what I have to share. That alone was enough to shut me up for 4 years. After coming out as a lesbian, I barely had a relationship with my family as it was, and I was terrified to lose the only thing that I wanted so desperately to hang on to. Spoiler, I lost him anyways. That being said, I have no idea what that information was. I've spent years racking my brain wondering what it was that I did to evoke such a disgusting statement from a woman that I loved. I've landed on the fact that at the beginning of our relationship, I agreed to participate in a platform that is now widely known as OF. When I started dating my girlfriend, she had an account on a site that I had little knowledge of at the time. Get your bag though. Honestly, I didn't mind. I was head over heels in love by this point, which regrettably was about a week in. So when she offered to add me to the site, I agreed. I thought it might be a fun thing to do together, and actually it was. We hired a friend of mine for a boudoir photo shoot and agreed to no nudity. I was a hairstylist at the time, and I also grew up in a very religious family. I wanted to make sure that if anyone within my circle stumbled upon our page, they would only see PG content. I believe this was the information that I was being threatened with, and it was enough to keep me quiet. So as we progressed in this story, know that this was in fact something that I had agreed to, and maybe it changed the course of my life. I met my first girlfriend on Tinder. Something about her just drew me in immediately, and I fell for her quickly. I had never been in love before. I had been previously married, and I loved my husband with everything that I had, but I was not in love with him. I didn't know the meaning of the word. When I began to date women, I finally understood what it was that people were singing about. I finally understood what sex meant to most people. I finally felt like myself, felt like home. I had yet to understand that with love comes heartbreak. And it can be a pain unlike anything else we ever endure. A pain that takes your breath away, that keeps you in bed for days, and yet doesn't allow you to sleep. A pain that I've experienced twice in my life to this day, and that's enough to keep me off of Tinder for the rest of it. For the sake of this story, we're going to refer to my ex-girlfriend as Sydney. About a year ago, Sydney reached out to me through TikTok. She asked me to meet for lunch and offered a space for both of us to get closure. This was 3 years after our breakup, the better part of which I spent being angry. Bottling up so much hate and confusion directed at a woman that once upon a time I believed I would marry. I had so many questions, and I knew that this might be my only chance to answer them. I accepted an apology at this meeting. I asked a few of my questions, but I could not offer forgiveness. I couldn't find it in me. I walked away from that day having more questions than I did answers, knowing that I provided peace for Sydney's heart and may never get it for mine. I won't bore you with the details of our relationship, which lasted all of 3 months. I spent Christmas with her family, we confessed our love, and we were making plans to move in together. I was going to break my lease, pack up my apartment, and move 40 minutes away from my job and my community for a woman that I had known less than 3 months. I know how it sounds. If I could go back now, I'd give myself a swift roundhouse kick to the ass. I'm a lot stronger now than I was then, and I'm 100% certain I could knock myself out. I needed it. Instead, I stayed floating in the clouds just the way I liked it. But I was in for a rude awakening, and it came on a night almost exactly 4 years ago. I had planned a date night for the two of us in the city. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse and a downtown staycation in a hotel that I had booked a few days prior. I'm not this way anymore. I'm no longer a hopeless romantic, no longer a surprise planner. After a steak dinner and a few glasses of wine, we headed back to the hotel. I feel as though I need to share some backstory on our intimate relationship. I don't mean to overstep into anyone else's sexuality, but I do need to share my perception. It started out as many new relationships do, and I had no reason to question the integrity of it. But as time progressed, I began to doubt my partner's sexuality. I won't get into the original cause for this confusion, but it weighed heavy on my mind. One day, towards the end of our relationship, I fell asleep in the back seat of the car after a birthday surprise that I had planned for Sydney. I had arranged for her best friend to fly out. I booked an Airbnb in a mountain town outside of the city, and I planned a full itinerary for the weekend. On the way home, I awoke to a conversation between Sydney and her best friend. "So are you a lesbian or bisexual?" "I'm bisexual." That was news to me. Sydney had very publicly come out as a lesbian not long after me, and while it didn't matter, I was still taken aback. Later, when we were alone, I asked her about this conversation. It wasn't until this moment that the doubts in my head turned to fears. Well, yeah, if we broke up, I'd go back to dating men. Not necessarily words that a newly awakened lesbian wants to hear from her first ever girlfriend. The bisexuality wasn't an issue. It was the apathetic nature towards a relationship that I was fully invested in by this point. This was one of the few separate events that led me to question the integrity of our relationship. But I still pressed on. I was in love. When we arrived at the hotel, we had a few more drinks to loosen up. By this time, the intimacy had grown a bit cold on both ends. I was trying to navigate through the fear that my partner was not actually into women at all. Again, this was my perception at the time, and it's a belief that was only mine to hold. Sexuality, I know, is not to be determined by anyone except us and our own bodies, but that did not stop me from perceiving the way that I did based on our experiences together. It's taken me so long to share this story because I don't even know how to tell it. And while I'm praying that sharing will heal a piece of my heart, I don't honestly know that it will. Please offer me grace as I haven't relived these events in a very long time. Do you mind if I take a video? I looked up at Sydney, who had her phone in her hands. It felt off, but I trusted her. Trust for me is hard to come by these days. I'll let you believe that I trust you, but in reality, I trust no one. I continued while Sydney began to take videos of me, flash on. After about 6 or 7 videos, I glanced up and my heart dropped. She was typing. Who the fuck was she talking to? What could she possibly have to say to someone in a moment like this? I had spent the last 10 minutes naked between her legs. Something in my gut yanked me back to reality, and I quickly jumped up next to her. That's when I saw it. She was on Snapchat. Her most recent snap had been a video that was opened just seconds ago. I won't pretend that I stayed calm. I freaked the fuck out. I yelled at her. I asked her if that's what she had been doing with the videos, and she called me crazy. She told me she would never do that. I asked her to pull up her camera roll and found only 2 videos. 2 videos of 6 or 7 that had been taken and sent off through Snapchat. I accused her of sending the videos to her ex-boyfriend, a 40-year-old man with children, whose name I believe that I saw on the screen. To this day, I don't know the truth about who those videos went to. She gave me another story when we met for lunch, and I'll share that later, but to me it's just a story, and I'll likely never know. But this is my perception of the truth, and I'm going to share it. I saw her ex-boyfriend's name on the screen, a man who had come up previously in our relationship because they kept in contact frequently through Snapchat. She assured me that it was nothing more than friendship, and again, I believed her. I insisted that she allowed me to look at her phone, and she refused. She screamed at me. She called me a psychopath. She told me that I was acting like Ashley, the only other girl that I had casually dated prior to her. Ashley went through my phone while I was in the shower, breaking my trust and ending our relationship. But this was not that. And I knew in my heart that the reason that Sydney would not allow me to see her phone is because she had done exactly what I had accused her of. This is all I'm going to share this week. I have to stop right here. Thank you if you made it this far. I'm really grateful for the support and the space to share my story. I have waited 4 years to release myself from this trauma, and it just has stuck with me for so long, and I would really like to let it go. So thank you for being here.